This is Jay Sekulow. A fourth object has now been shot down by the U.S. military over the weekend. The American people need answers.
Keeping you informed and engaged, now more than ever. This is Sekulow. We want to hear from you. Share and post your comments or call 1-800-684-3110. And now your host, Jay Sekulow.
All right, well, I hope everybody had a good weekend. It certainly is a fascinating Super Bowl game, so congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs on a well-fought, well-earned game. High-altitude object shot down near Lake Huron on Sunday. This is number 4, the fourth time in just over a week that the U.S. military has taken down objects in North American airspace. On Saturday, an object was taken down actually flying in Canadian airspace, which was interesting. That became a joint authorization. President Biden authorized the use of military jets from our fleet to take this particular, whatever they're calling it, not balloon,
unidentified
flying object is what it is, down. And then Prime Minister Trudeau actually gave the order since it was over the Canadian airspace. This was part of the Northern Air Command's first time the Northern Air Command has actually, since its founding, actually utilized weaponry at a target.
Yeah, I think the big concern a lot of people have in this, obviously, we're just now having this happen over and over and over. A lot of questions come up. The big question is, what are these things? The first one was obvious. They said very specifically, very early, this is a Chinese-run spy balloon. Okay, I think we can all wrap our heads around what that is and what that means. They said it was here to collect data, and they were going to shoot it down when it was safe. And they didn't say that. Eventually, they had to shoot it down when it was safe. Now we've had multiple, either they went out, they couldn't find it, or they go out and they shoot down these things, whether that's in all over North America, really, at this point. Yep. And that was over Alaska, that was over Canada, they had over Lake Huron, as you said, and then they've had some others where they've just gone out to take a look. The odd part is that we aren't getting answers. We had answers very quickly the first time around. What this was, I think people were able to kind of go, okay, well, that makes sense. China would be sending a spy balloon towards us. That kind of fits their MO. But yesterday, this was from the NORAD press briefing. Here was, when finally pushed on it, here was the question that was asked and the answer.
Because you still haven't been able to tell us what these things are that we are shooting out of the sky, that raises the question, have you ruled out aliens or extraterrestrials, and if so, why? Because that is what everyone is asking us right now.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Helene. I'll let the intel community and the counterintelligence community figure that out. I haven't ruled out anything at this point. We continue to assess every threat or potential threat unknown that approaches North America with an attempt to identify it.
And that was from General Glenn Van Herrick, who's a commander of the United States Northern Command and the North American Aerospace Defense Command. Obviously, we're not throwing up the red flag here saying this is aliens, this is extraterrestrials, but it is a bizarre time when they can't even say it's not.
Well, we're also getting the jets are going up to identify these objects. They can't figure out what what's propelling the object. Yeah. The propulsion is not clear, and they describe them differently. Some say octagon, some say more cylinder in shape.
Yeah, some say very specifically not what the Chinese spy balloon was. Now, there is a lot of theories that what's happening now is we weren't even really checking. We weren't really checking that level of airspace and to see what really is up there. Now that we are, all of a sudden we're going, oh, no, look, they're everywhere. And that's a big concern, too. That should be an intelligence nightmare. The fact that even if this is something benign and not that big of a deal, which clearly if you're sending F-16, you're sending planes in to shoot it down, I don't think it is.
It's not benign because they were flying at 20,000 feet, which can interfere easily with civilian airspace.
Yeah, there could be
many different things. They were saying was jamming their radar.
Yeah, and a lot of people have theories. Yeah, I mean, that's what Amy on Rumble said. The UFO concept may be a distraction because it could be about something else top secret. You have people coming out saying, of course, this could be stuff that that we're controlling, that we're not having the proper communication channels with. I think that is the big concern. And this is what could happen to President Biden. National security is pretty darn important. When things seem like they're out of hand,
it's not good.
That is where real answers have to be made. And when you can't even give an answer, it's a big concern. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. 1-800-684-3110. Get your voice heard on the air. Again, that's at 1-800-684-3110. If you're watching on social media, like, share, do all those things on your platform. We'll be right back.
The U.S. military has shot down another high-altitude object, this time near Lake Huron.
It comes after the U.S. Air Force shot down a Chinese balloon which crossed the continental United States last week. China has denied the balloon was used for spying and said it was a weather monitoring device. 3 other objects were also shot down in recent days over the U.S. and Canada.
This is now the 3rd object shot down in the past 3 days, guys, starting on Friday when an object was shot down over the north coast of Alaska, as you see here on this chart, right on the northern coast of Alaska. That search for the debris has been hampered by rough weather.
The latest object was shot down over Lake Huron yesterday. It was initially spotted over Montana, but made its way across Wisconsin and Michigan. The FAA temporarily restricted planes from flying over Lake Michigan until military jets could take it down.
Trails of vapor streak across the skies of eastern Michigan. These videos, posted on social media, appear to show planes flying very close. For days now, the airspace above Canada and the United States has been playing host to a series of UFOs. The latest incident began on Saturday when an object was detected above military sites in the US state of Montana. Fighter jets were scrambled, but initially nothing was found. But then on Sunday, the object, whatever it was, reappeared and was eventually shot down over Lake Huron near the Canadian border.
We know that the U.S. military now is looking at a wider range of radar data, so they may just be seeing more of these things than they have in the past, but it's not clear whether now recently they're moving more into U.S. airspace and that's causing the concern, or whether this is just an entirely new phenomenon just in the recent days.
I do hope that very soon the administration has a lot more information for all of us on what's going on.
I would prefer them to be trigger happy than to be permissive. This shows some of the problems and gaps that we have. We need to fill those as soon as possible.
Welcome back to the broadcast, everyone. So the 4th object has been shot down. This one was over U.S. airspace. On Saturday, it was over Canadian airspace, but shot down by a U.S. Aircraft, and that was, again, with a kind of a joint authorization. President Biden had to authorize the use of U.S. military aircraft to take the object down. Prime Minister Trudeau had to actually give the go-ahead order because it was over Canadian airspace. This is getting pretty complex when you start realizing what we're having to do here. And NORTHCOM has never actually deployed weaponry in defense of our airspace or the homeland. But, Andy, you take a look at the situation on the most recent one over the second most recent, the one over Canada. That became complicated because, and it was our partners in that, which were the Canadians, worked well with the United States. But This is getting serious.
Well, it is. Prime Minister Trudeau Canada does not have the capability of shooting it down, so they had to ask the President of the United States to use an American aircraft to dismember it or knock it down, which they did. But that is we have a good relationship with the Canadians, but it is becoming a very difficult and dangerous thing, and all kinds of theories are coming up and are being propagated as to what it is. I think Mario Rubio said the best thing when he said, "You better hope it's an alien
Let's play
aircraft."
This. Yeah, he said, "You better hope it's."
It's from a couple of years back, maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. It's Marco Rubio. Just to clarify, and this was his statement when there was sort of the concept of the sort of alien conversation started to happen. The UFO files were dropping. Yep. Things were going on. The Tic Tac and all of that had made news. So here is a clip from Marco Rubio about this issue.
Are we alone?
No, look, here's the interesting thing for me about all this, and the reason why I think it's an important topic, okay? And that is we have things flying over our military bases and places where we're conducting military exercises, and we don't know what it is, and it isn't ours. So that's the legitimate question to ask. I would say that, frankly, that if it's something of outside this planet, that might actually be better than the fact that we've seen some technological leap on behalf of the Chinese or the Russians or some other adversary.
So he kind of predicted some of this.
Yeah. And I mean, Don's we're taking your calls, by the way, 800-684-3110. 1-800-684-3110. Let's go ahead and take Don's call from California.
All right, Don's calling in California. He ready? All right, Don, you're on the air.
Hi, guys. Thanks for taking my call. I got one question, and I want the government to answer. Where's the pictures?
Yeah.
And don't tell me they're classified.
Yeah, it's a little odd. That's what I said mainly.
The Chinese
John.
balloon,
The first one
spy
we
balloon.
saw images, we saw video of them recovering it. It was very clear and detailed of what it was, why it was a threat, why it was not a threat to certain areas, and what it was doing. Now we've seen these others, and they've specifically kind of come out. Sometimes they've said they're balloon. A lot of times they don't use the word balloon. And it's being much cagier with what actually is happening here. And that's where you feel completely uncertain about your government, what's happening here. You also worry that this is a bunch of nothing, and as a lot of people have said, that this is just a giant distraction.
Well, look what you've not heard about. You haven't heard about Hunter Biden's laptop. You haven't heard about documents.
Make you feel good about the Biden administration. It makes you feel like that we've had all these things flying over us, and it's a mess, and people worry about air travel. They worry about a lot of things. I mean, that's the first thing that popped in my mind was we have all these things flying around at 30 to 50,000 feet. That's not that high. And you have a lot of air travel going over these areas. I mean, this is kind of your prime ways to cross the country. So that's the concern to me, whether it's aliens or whether it's China.
Yeah.
My big concern is how does this, one of it is how it affects people and their nerves going into normal activity like travel.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a problem. So to make it more complicated of a problem, let's listen to the famous domain gap. This is the one where they talk about, that was, basically the NORAD made a mistake.
It's my responsibility to detect threats to North America. I will tell you that we did not detect those threats, and that's a domain awareness gap that we have to figure out.
That is a very troubling statement, Andy, that there's domain gaps, domain awareness gaps, which means that our existing approach was not detecting until they were visuals by American citizens saying what's in the air.
That is something that should alarm all of us. Yes. Alarm all of us. We have domain gaps. In other words, NORAD, which is there to protect the American continent, North America, including the United States, obviously, has got gaps in what is going on over our airspace that the head of NORAD is telling us his responsibility is to check those out and make sure that they don't have gaps as is occurring. That is a frightening prospect, Jay, and something that I think is in the lap of this administration.
Yeah, and then you got Chuck Schumer also weighing in on this. So let's take a listen to what he had to say.
And one more point I'd make on this, by the way. I do think Senator Tester is looking into why it took so long for us, our military, our intelligence, to know about these balloons. That's something I support. Congress should look at that. That's the question we have to answer. I think our military, our intelligence are doing a great job, present and future. I feel a lot of confidence in what they're doing. But why, as far back as the Trump administration, did no one know about this?
And it later came out that was because it never went up the chains of command. And the words that were supposed to be used to get it to the attention of the White House, whether it's a Republican or Democrat, was the word urgent. And these were not deemed urgent. Now we're flying, missiles into these devices, and we have no idea what they look like. And the people are describing them, the pilots, I'm not blaming the pilots, are describing them differently. It raises so many questions.
Yeah, it's clearly different kinds of devices. It's not all the same.
Yeah.
You've heard cylindrical, you've heard
octagon.
Octagonal,
octagonal. And you've heard, obviously, the balloon type. So then these are a lot of different things, not necessarily from the same sources. And I think they're probably trying to figure out how we're going to address this, if they ever will. There's a good chance that this is never addressed. We never find out what this is. We never find out who they are. I mean, maybe it's something you can put a FOIA request on, but I mean, I don't think that really works with national security in that sense.
Well, they have an investigative defense.
Right.
Talking about FOIA requests, let me tell you what's going on. We did receive, and we'll talk about it in the next segment, our first tranche of responses on the National Archives document issue about how they contacted President Biden. President Trump, they put a search warrant in on him. President Biden, they asked it. Here's the first tranche, which is pretty significant. I'll tell you one thing we learned, which they then leaked. As soon as we got access to these documents, then they put it out there. And there was another area that was searched, which was unknown until right now. And that was a law firm in Boston evidently had documents from then when he was vice president, that they were in possession of that may have classified markings. At the same time, they did a surveillance or a search by the FBI of the former vice president's house, Mike Pence, and they found a document marked classified. we'll get into more of this on the next segment of the broadcast. But, folks, look, obviously there's a problem. Here's what the National Archives is very good at. They're very good at targeting students that have a pro-life message. Those they can take them right out of their museum, which, by the way, we have reviewed and approved for filing now a temporary restraining order since some of the students are going back on Friday. Our lawyers are meeting with the U.S. attorneys that are handling the case today, but we're prepared to seek a TRO. That's on the museum, the National Archives, throwing students out that were pro-life or telling them to take their clothing off or insert it, so no one could see it. That they can do. They could send all their personnel out to round up these students. But, Andy, apparently what they can't do is keep records of classified documents that former presidents and current presidents might have.
Yeah, they seem to have a failing in that respect. But they can tell a person to take that sweater off because it says something about pro-life, and I don't care what you have underneath it. You can't come in. You need to take it off, so you're barred from the museum. But, I'm really concerned about the National Archives and the fact that now it, too, along with the FBI, along with the justice, is being weaponized. Is being weaponized to take a particular stance with respect to these documents. They're not doing a good job of keeping the documents in order. They're doing a terrible job of doing what they're supposed to do under the statute. And I think that really is something that we need to focus on directly.
And when we go back to the issue of these objects that have been shot at, unidentified flying objects, which is what they are.
Yeah, they've kept out flying. If you look at it,
they don't want to say flying
because they know what the connotation is. They keep saying unidentified objects.
But they use the word kinetic, which means moving.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a Greek word, kinesis. Yeah. It means moving threats.
Right.
So they use that word. If you break it down and see that, it's a moving threat.
That's pretty crazy.
But here's let's play Natasha Bertrand from CNN. This is the scary part.
Those pilots, we have learned, have given very conflicting accounts of what they actually experienced, with some pilots saying that the object interfered with the plane's sensors, other pilots saying that they didn't really experience that, other pilots saying that when they looked at the object, they could identify no identifiable propulsion system, and they did not know how it was actually staying in the air, cruising at that altitude of about 40,000 feet. So this is all added to the Pentagon's wariness of describing in more detail what this object actually is.
How is this possible?
Well, I mean, that's pretty terrifying. I mean, all of that.
I feel like I'm in a 1950s science fiction movie.
Yes. I know.
We saw it, but we don't know what it was. It had
changed.
A saucer like it changed. It went up. It went down. It went sideways. It went this way. It went that way. But we have no propulsion. But it had kinetic threat, which means it could move.
Yeah.
I mean,
which
what?
it did over to Lake Huron.
Yeah, not scary at all. Nothing to see here. There's videos on. They do video on these fighter jets.
Yeah, and what are they showing?
No, I'm saying we could.
Yeah, well, where are those videos?
It exists. It happened with the TikTok. It took forever from the release. You got to call Tom DeLonge. He's got to send people at the stars to go get this information. But that's the only way to do it.
A U.S. fighter jet took down another flying object over northern Canada, and the search is still on for what remains of whatever was shot down over Alaska on Friday. This string of events raising so many questions. Are these all spy balloons, similar to the Chinese balloon shot down off South Carolina last weekend? Are these a new threat, or is the U.S. just tracking them more closely now? Some lawmakers on both sides of the aisle demanding more information from the Biden administration.
We're calling this an object because that's the best description we have right now. We do not know who owns it, whether it's state-owned or corporate-owned or privately owned. We just don't know. A recovery effort will be made, and we're hopeful that it'll be successful, and then we can learn a little bit more about it.
The Pentagon saying in a statement the object flew in proximity to sensitive DoD sites and assessed it was a safety flight hazard and a threat due to its potential surveillance capabilities. The FAA issuing a temporary flight restriction over nearby Lake Michigan earlier Sunday afternoon, citing Department of Defense activities, coming just hours after airspace was restricted over Montana Saturday night.
U.S. officials have told Fox in the past 24 hours the object shot down over Canada was this small metallic balloon, and it was tethered to a small payload. Friday, we heard from John Kirby at the podium here at the White House.
Now there is this trio of unidentified objects with very few descriptors and big questions about where exactly they came from and who they belong to. The two objects that were shot down on Friday and then Saturday, we still have very limited details in what exactly these objects contained and looked like. Officials here have said that they were smaller than that Chinese spy spy balloon.
The second and the third objects were shot down in very remote areas. So my guess is that there's just not a lot of information out there yet to share.
Hey, welcome back to the broadcast. We had an interesting conversation here during the break. CeCe Howell's joined us, too, here. So, we've got a lot of legal activity going on, too. As I said, we've got a TRO that we're getting ready to file against the National Archives, but it's the student National Archives case. That's the one where the pro-life students were told, take your material off, your shirt, your bracelet, whatever it might be. We don't allow that in here. That they can track, by the way. The National Archives, very good at tracking that. Not so great at tracking documents to former presidents, and former vice presidents. So we have that National Archive case going on. Then we had the National Archives FOIA, Freedom of Information Act request, which involves the documents. And there was an interesting development there, Cece. We're going to go back to the NORAD situation in a moment. There was an interesting development there because for the first time, and by the way, we started getting documents on this. I'm holding in my hand. We can put them up on the screen, too. These are the documents. So the first tranche is pretty significant. What is the most significant was there was another location that nobody knew about that had to be obtained, where documents had to be obtained. And that actually was a law firm in Boston that had represented the then vice president, now the president.
Right. So we just got the first issue of responses. They're doing this on a rolling basis. And this is just category 1, which refers to emails between the National Archives and representatives of President Biden related to the transfer of the Obama-era presidential records to the National Archives. So this particular email exchange that we got, it was 74 pages of email exchanges that we received, contained very interesting emails about documents and boxes that are located in Boston. Now, this has been an issue before, but it seemed like they kind of, swept it under the rug. It was not a big deal.
Nobody knew about Boston documents.
Right.
That was not until we got these documents. There was no. So this was So you've had. Let's be clear. You've had the Penn Biden Center in Washington. Those offices were searched. You had his residence was searched, and was 2 locations inside that residence. Remember, it was in the garage next to the Corvette, and then it was actually in the house next to I'm not mistaken, it was in his office, right? His office. And then, I don't remember, did they search the beach house and nothing came up there? Is that correct? Beach house?
They did a search.
Nothing there. And then, lo and behold, we get the response to our document request, and there was a whole group of documents in Boston.
Right. So his private attorney has an office in Boston, and the emails say, ensure that those boxes in his office in Boston remain secured in a locked space and are not accessed by anyone. So there are a bunch of boxes in a law firm, apparently an office in Boston.
Okay, so if you're the Attorney General of the United States and you've unleashed all these special counsels, a special counsel against Trump, a special counsel against Biden, I don't know if they're going to do a special counsel against Pence. I guess if he declares, they'll have to do that. Wouldn't you be saying, Andy, because you were a U.S. attorney,
Yep.
This isn't working out like I thought.
No.
Pull this back.
Merrick Garland has kind of overplayed his hand on this severely, appointing special counsels here and there. But it's what you have said all along, Jay. You don't like special counsels.
I do not.
I don't like special counsels. I mean, it's an unleashed dog. You don't know which way they're going and what they're going to do. And then now we've got a plethora of special counsels all over the place. I think Merrick Garland, if he's really got it, any sense, would say enough of the special counsels. We'll handle this within the Justice Department.
Because the problem is deeper than they thought it was.
Right.
It wasn't simply a document, obtaining a document. It was, obviously, there's a misunderstanding between the administrations, the former administrations, the current administrations, on how these documents are supposed to be handled with National Archives.
Right. And it is an administrative issue. It's not a criminal issue that they've made it into. Right. And it's ridiculous, just like you said. When it was first Trump, it was horrific. But now we've seen, again, we have two former vice presidents that have documents in their possession. This should be gone about by the National Archives in an administrative procedure, collecting these documents, tracking these documents, not in a criminal case.
But like I said, man, they can track students that are coming into their museum, which, by the way, houses the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. They could track that in a nanosecond, that those students were pro-life, and get them out of there. And by the way, ACL, we filed a lawsuit against the Smithsonian. Then we filed one against the National Archives. Now we're prepared to file, and I say prepared because under the rules, you have to notify the Department of Justice, which we did over the weekend, that we intend to seek what's called interim relief, a temporary restraining order, because some of our clients are planning on going back to the National Archives Museum this Friday. So we need expedited relief on that. So that's in process. Our lawyers, I'll probably be filing that this afternoon unless the government consents, which I don't expect they will, but who knows. Now, having said all that, let's get back to this other issue, Logan, because the question that people are asking, and it's the one you asked, is where's the video?
Yeah, we have a lot of calls coming. One actually came in and it had to leave, but they asked, no, they haven't. Let's go to Warren. Warren's calling in Indiana on line 4. You're on the air. Idaho, I'm sorry.
Thanks, guys, for taking my call. And
sure.
Yeah, like you said, where's the video? You'd think that those reconnaissance jets would have video of whatever they're looking at.
They 100% do. It may not be your most high-quality thing you've ever seen. Maybe more radar-ish looking.
Because they're flying at 400 to 600 knots.
It definitely exists. I would say that that's a 90% certainty that these planes have those kind of capabilities. They are recording. They're recording what's going on in their headsets. All of this stuff is documented. The difference is they're not going to publicly make this available. It's not going to happen. I think there may be so much pressure that some of it has to come out, but do I think that is? Probably not, Warren. Probably not anytime soon.
I think the American people are entitled to answers here.
I agree.
They are shooting down.
But let's just be honest. That's been the truth since the 60s. I mean, there's a lot of entitled to answers that we never get, whether that's John Kennedy, whether that's this. There's a lot of things we know that we've never been given 100% proof on, and they've said, there are documents, we're not ready to release them. There are videos, we're not ready to release them. That is what's going to happen with this unless there is enough American pushback to say, you need to tell us what these threats are. If they are extraterrestrials, that's sort of the silly version that people kind of throw out there. I think there's obviously a good chance that could be something like that. But I think the main thing is people are concerned about their national security. They're concerned about the leadership of the presidency, and they're concerned about their own safety, whether they're in the air or not.
We're going to ask, Ric Grenell's going to be joining us. We're going to ask him. Because this is, look, I mean, we have had 4 encounters. I know I say the word encounters, I think of, here we go. Here we go. But we have had 4 encounters that have required the discharge of expensive missiles from expensive aircraft, F-16s, F-15, 16s, and 22 is what's been utilized for this. We have had to deal with international agreements with Canada because one of these unidentified objects, moving objects, kinetic objects, flying objects, because they're flying. We just can't figure out what their propulsion is.
They're just not
By the way,
using
every
that
time they
word.
say this, we don't know what the propulsion is. 2 pilots looked at the same thing and saw it differently. You know what it starts making you think? What is going on here? Is this such a sophisticated device that it could appear to one radar system one way and one to another? I have no idea. But that's when Marco Rubio said, you better hope it's aliens rather than the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah, we at least know the first one that was easily identifiable what it was that. If we're to believe what we're told.
Or the president let it traverse the entire United States. You know, he had legal authority, CC, under international law and under just self-defense for the country to take action when it entered U.S. airspace. He didn't have to wait till it exited U.S. airspace.
Absolutely, or wait till it absolutely goes across the whole entire United States, gathering information. And I don't, this might be my ignorance, but I don't understand why we have to shoot these down and destroy them. Can we not somehow capture them and maintain the integrity
Mike Pompeo
of what
said
they
he
are?
thought we had the capability to do something like that. I think what's happening is this is moving at a pace they didn't anticipate, and they don't know what it is. And they don't know what it is, and they're afraid there could be. Is it
what's on board?
Well, the balloon ended up having explosive devices on it. So lassoing it, so to speak.
Completely
You
unknown.
pull it down, and it's got that kind of device on it. That could be trouble. We're here for another 30 minutes. Support the work of the ACLJ at aclj.org. Back with more in a moment. In our nation's history, we've never had this happen, ever.
They don't like conservatives. They don't like your viewpoint.
They were going after the free speech of American citizens, and these kind of actions just keep eroding the trust of American citizens in our government.
This isn't about politics. This is about people and people's lives.
They wanted to pressure social media companies to spy on Americans and to eliminate your ability to speak freely.
Your government is weaponizing intelligence agencies to go after their political opponents. That's really scary.
You're not just saying, I want to change, the priorities in the FBI. You're saying, I want to get rid of a lot of these people.
this is driven by expanding the size and scope of government.
This is amping up the political environment to a level that I don't think we've seen in U.S. history.
Keeping you informed and engaged, now more than ever. This is Sekulow. And now your host, Jay Sekulow.
Hey, welcome back. We've got a lot to discuss about. We talked about the fact that we've got ACLJ lawyers today talking with the Department of Justice on our lawsuit against the National Archives. This is the one involving the students who were harassed because they had pro-life T-shirts on during the March for Life. They're going back, or a group of the students are going back on Friday, so we now are moving for a temporary restraining order. So our lawyers are talking with the Department of Justice lawyers that are representing the National Archives today. As I said, the first half hour, the National Archives cannot keep up with documents from former presidents that are marked secret or top secret or classified, but they sure can target students that have a pro-life message. So there you go. By the way, we're handling both of those. We have our first response to the Freedom of Information Act request we filed on the National Archives as it relates, this is important, as it relates to the Biden documents that he has, which nobody's talking about now because of all this going on with these unidentified objects, moving objects, kinetic objects, that have now 4 encounters that the United States has had. But anyways, we now found out that there was a 4th location, which nobody knew before, and that 4th location was in Boston, a law firm that represented the president when he was vice president. So there you have it. Then we've got the situation today, Logan, with over the weekend, there were 2 more encounters from our military with these unidentified, they don't say flying objects, they just say unidentified kinetic moving objects. One involved Lake Huron. That was the most recent on Sunday that we knocked down. And then we had the one, of course, that we had to coordinate with Canada that flew over their airspace.
Yeah, and I think our assumption at first was that this was more of the Chinese weather balloon type thing, spy balloons that were going over. And this is what we heard yesterday during the NORAD press conference that happened in regards, this is a new clip, you haven't heard it, a clip specifically about who the source is of these flying objects.
I would be hesitant to and urge you not to attribute it to any specific country. We don't know. That's why it's so critical to get our hands on these so that we can further assess and analyze what they are.
This is, again, not saying it's from China, not saying it's from anywhere. And look, they may not know. They may be true. The scary part is they may not know.
But we had resources up there. We had assets up there that detect it. And we had assets that took it down. And they're saying they saw 2 different things. The pilots are saying that. Yeah. It's a very, very bizarre. Let's go ahead and take a call. We are taking your calls at 800-684-3110.
Yep, let's go to Waylon, who's calling in Colorado on line 1. Waylon, you're on the air.
Hi, Waylon.
Hey, guys. Happy Monday, and thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
My question is, being that this administration is good at sleight of hand, what are we missing that's not on the media that these flying objects are flying through the air? What are we missing that's not in the media?
Waylon, I think that discussion is happening, which is what are we being distracted by? This feels like almost a publicity stunt that's going on. And look, it may be. There's a lot of things, whether that's the Biden laptop, the Hunter laptop, or all the stories, the document searching, all the things that came out.
This weekend, the FBI searched Mike Pence's house. The Department of Justice, the special counsel, Jack Smith,
we're not talking about the border,
issued a subpoena to Mike Pence to testify before a grand jury. Never done in U.S. history, a former vice president testifying basically against the president of the United States. I mean, these are huge issues that no one's talking about.
Yeah, and a lot of people aren't talking. You're not talking about the border. You're not talking about sort of the failed State of the Union conversation. This is a fun story to tell in some ways because it's very engaging. It's very interesting. It's given me a reason to turn on the news, and I don't turn on 24-hour cable news ever. And it makes me turn on and go, what's new now? What's new now with the flying objects? It is interesting. Is it a distraction, these flying objects? Maybe so. Very well. Now, I have to say, the news seems to even realize that, and you are seeing the CNNs and Foxes start to divert from this conversation. This is not all they're leading with now. And over the weekend, it was wall-to-wall flying objects. Now we're actually starting to see some of the other stories come back. But we have to be careful. And look, I think to me, the main thing is this is a national security nightmare. So when I look back and go, are they distracting us? They may be, but they're not distracting with something that makes me feel better. I'd much rather hear, I have more confidence in Joe Biden talking about a laptop than I am there are flying unidentified objects from other countries or planets that are surveilling us or are doing things, or we can't even visually identify what they are.
A little scary.
That is way more terrifying than his kid has a bad laptop. Okay, so I don't know what's a more positive story. Neither. Both all bad. Confidence, 0. We'll be right back with Ric Grenell.
All right, we've got our good friends at Goldco. I want to talk to you about that. The stock markets are topsy-turvy. Inflation at the highest it's been since 1982. You've got a $30 trillion debt. If you have retirement savings or 401ks or IRAs, let me encourage you to diversify your portfolio. And a great way to do it is to talk to our friends at Goldco. You can get their gold investment kit for gold and silver. You just go to goldbuyerskit.com. That's goldbuyerskit.com. They have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, which is huge. And gold has been a safe investment for really since the beginning of time, and that's the truth. But if you want to get information, I encourage you to, as you diversify your portfolio, talk to our friends at Goldco. They're standing with our broadcast, which we appreciate. Again, it's goldbuyerskit.com for Goldco.
That's right. And I also want to tell you about Field of Greens. You've heard us talking about them for the last few weeks. They're a science-backed formula that helps you get all your fruits and vegetables in an easy way. If you're like me, you know that you're on the run. Maybe you got kids, grandkids, you got a lot going on at work. It is hard to get that many servings, 5 servings of fruits and vegetables every day. But with Field of Greens, it's easy. Just a couple scoops of this powder, you're good to go. And you get the right fruits and vegetables. Again, like what my dad said with our other sponsors, same with Field of Greens. What's really great about them is that they also support this broadcast. And not a lot of sponsors are on there saying, let's do it. You have to have people who are brave enough to take on these issues and be a part of it. Field of Greens, they offer a great product, and what you get is 15% off your first order just for our listeners. If you visit fieldofgreens.com, use the promo code JAY to get 15% off. Again, that's fieldofgreens.com, promo code J. We'll be right back with Ric Grenell.
Everyone, we're talking about a lot of different issues. We're talking about the National Archives. We're talking about the searches of presidents, former vice presidents. We're talking about unidentified kinetic, whatever they are, flying around our atmosphere or even lower, 20,000 feet, and the U.S. taking action. And Ric Grenell's joining us. Of course, he's our senior advisor on international affairs and global issues. And Rick, you were also the director of national intelligence. So the one thing no one understands here is we've now had 4 encounters. This is the first time NORAD, by the way, has ever deployed weaponry inside U.S. airspace to protect the homeland, basically. They were authorized during 9/11. They didn't have to utilize it here. You've had 4 encounters. One of those encounters ends up over Canada, where we had to have a joint operation with the Canadians. They authorized us to take down the object. What is going on here in your view? And answers from the administration are frankly nerve-wracking. Gaps in communication, gaps in our intelligence, pilots saying it looked different to 2 pilots describing the same, whatever this unidentified object is, look different. So, and of course they're moving it, Mach 1. So I get all that, but it's very concerning. We're getting a lot of calls from American people that are concerned about what is really going on here.
Well, first of all, we're not getting answers. Be very clear that Congress needs to get more aggressive about getting these answers. Normal people look at the situation, Jay, and they say, I don't understand why in the original spy balloon, we waited till it crossed all of the United States before shooting it down. And now we're aggressively going and shooting down objects. It seems like the administration is scrambling that they originally made a mistake and now we're making up for it. I think they've got to come clean. And I'll say this, I've said it before, but I think that the opposite of America first is consensus with the Europeans or consensus with the Chinese. And Joe Biden has demonstrated time and time again that he would rather have a calm relationship with the Chinese than putting America first. I believe that diplomacy is about pushing forward what's best for America. Shoot down the spy balloon, figure out what's going on, and then have diplomacy come and try to say, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And have our diplomats push forward this idea that we put America first and we will articulate America first policies to our friends, allies, and others.
Rick, one of the things I thought about is if we know the first one was authorized and implemented by the Chinese Communist Party. That's clear. So you wonder then, we don't know the origins of these others, and the military is being very careful saying we don't know the country of origin. But just for the sake of this discussion, let's assume it's the Chinese or someone working with the Chinese Communist Party. Could this be a test to see how far they can get into U.S. airspace and to see what our reactions would be? Because they got away with the first one. Like you said, it traversed the entire continent of the United States where we are located. It went right over here, by the way. I mean, it flew right over where our studios are, right down to the coast in Hilton Head. I mean, it looks like to me someone's trying something, or, like you said, we're just more sensitive to it now. But either way, it's not a good sign.
So I want to be clear that I don't know exactly what's happening. I've refused to be briefed on the issue because I feel like the administration is scrambling to try some Trump officials to help them out here. But my gut reaction to what's happening, based on the knowledge that I have, is that this has been going on throughout the Biden administration. They got caught by allowing this spy balloon to cross throughout the United States. Remember that they knew it was happening for a while before the public knew. And so they were trying to hide it from us. And it probably would have continued to go back to China with all of the information if the public hadn't become aware of it. So I think that all of the other objects that we're seeing, it looks to me like it's part of the same strategy, but we're just now finding out the extent of the strategy. And there are individuals who are beginning in the intelligence community to come forward and share information because they realize that the Biden team, led by Abraham, is not being open and honest about what's really at stake.
Yeah, Rick, I think one of the big concerns people have is just sort of that lack of transparency. He's not being comfortable with how this administration is handling any of this. It's not necessarily even in what it is or what's flying above us and sort of the conspiratorial nature of this. It's more everything feels unsafe. It feels out of control. And that's a big concern of the American people, a big concern of me and my family, because what it makes you do, it doesn't necessarily make me go, oh, are there aliens coming to invade? Oh, is it China coming? You're obviously concerned about that, but also go like, is it safe for me to be, doing a flight across the country when they're not checking that there's, something at 40,000 feet? Those are the kind of things that start to creep in your mind because there is this general feeling of an unsafe nature coming from this administration. You don't feel secure.
Look, I think that what you're really getting to, and we've talked about this before, is that the intelligence community has a credibility problem. They've selectively leaked information for partisan purposes. We saw them do Russia collusion narrative. We heard them say that if you move the embassy to Jerusalem, there'd be World War III. The opposite was true. We actually had peace accords when we did it. And so the intelligence community has a real credibility problem. And this is one of the things that I said to our great intelligence officers who are being impacted by the selective leakers. I told them that they have this credibility problem and they alone can fix it. They have to come clean with the American people and be transparent. Transparency is not political. It will help the American people believe in the system and in the processes. Right now, Avril Haines is being criticized by Democrats and Republicans because she's not transparent. This is a real problem.
Well, talking about transparency, Rick, we filed a Freedom of Information Act demand with the National Archives on the whole Biden documents issue to find out what's going on. And we got, actually, shockingly, without having to go to federal court, I think they realized they had to respond to us because we're on top of this. We've engaged in it. So I'm holding my hand. This is our first tranche. What is fascinating in this first tranche of documents is, unbeknownst to anyone else, as the Biden administration says how transparent they are, there was another search. And this was of a law firm in Boston that evidently represented the president when he was vice president or when he left when his administration was done with Barack Obama. And this was a law firm in Boston that had documents, and they got these documents in early or mid-November. And then 2 weeks later, they put that special counsel on top of Donald Trump, got the search warrant. They knew already that they were into location 4 for the Biden documents.
Thank God we've got ACLJ on top of this that's pushing the government to be transparent. If it wasn't for ACLJ, we wouldn't be knowing this information. So thank you to all our supporters. But I think there's another angle to this, Jay, because the Biden documents, when he left as vice president, did not go to the Biden Center immediately. It took like a year and a half before they showed up there. I think we need to know where all of those documents were before they went to the Biden Center, because we now know that the Biden Center contained classified information, which means that interim place where these documents were for a year and a half also had classified information contained in that space. Where is that space? Where were they?
Rick, the whole thing's interesting because I think Merrick Garland unleashed a torrent, and it's been a disaster. He put a special counsel against Donald Trump, executed a search warrant. Then, as he already knew that there were document issues with the current president of the United States, then he goes to the president of the United States saying, we got to have your documents because you've got documents you're not supposed to have. And it comes out that if his lawyers didn't consent to it, they were going to get a search warrant against the sitting president of the United States. And while all that's going on, and Mike Pence is, I'm friends with Mike Pence, he's criticizing Donald Trump's handling of the documents, and he's got documents at his house. So it tells me this, okay? The National Archives does not know what it's doing. We're getting to the bottom of it, which is what Merrick Garland should have done instead of issuing criminal process.
100% true. They are being partisan. They're weaponizing DOJ and the FBI against Republicans. We see this time and time again. And, I just have to say this, Jay. Donald Trump outs them every single time. Every time they say that Donald Trump is doing X, Y, or Z, it turns out that his political enemies are doing it worse, and DOJ and the FBI tried to cover up for it. So I think that we've got a mess on our hands, and I'll say it again, but we elected Republicans to get aggressive, to have hearings, to come to the conclusion, to be transparent, to push for transparency. They got to get to work because there's a lot here.
There is a lot here. And you know what? The 2-year window that they have to do it goes by in a nanosecond. Rick, we appreciate it. Your support, as Rick said, your support of the ACLJ, none of this happens without your support of the American Center for Law and Justice. Ric Grenell's part of our team. We're getting these answers in the FOIA requests. We get you this broadcast. Support the work of the ACLJ. You do that at aclj.org. That's aclj.org. A great way for you to stand with us. We're going to get into this. And then AOC did not like the Jesus ads.
If you want this last chance to get your phone calls in, got a few lines open. 1-800-684-3110. If you're on hold, remain on hold. 1-800-684-3110.
The U.S. military has shot down another high-altitude object, this time near Lake Huron.
It comes after the U.S. Air Force shot down a Chinese balloon which crossed the continental United States last week. China has denied the balloon was used for spying and said it was a weather monitoring device. 3 other objects were also shot down in recent days over the U.S. and Canada.
This is now the 3rd object shot down in the past 3 days, guys, starting on Friday when an object was shot down over the north coast of Alaska, as you see here on this chart, right on the northern coast of Alaska. That search for the debris has been hampered by rough weather.
The latest object was shot down over Lake Huron yesterday. It was initially spotted over Montana, but made its way across Wisconsin and Michigan. The FAA temporarily restricted planes from flying over Lake Michigan until military jets could take it down.
Trails of vapor streak across the skies of eastern Michigan. These videos, posted on social media, appear to show planes flying very close. For days now, the airspace above Canada and the United States has been playing host to a series of UFOs. The latest incident began on Saturday when an object was detected above military sites in the US state of Montana. Fighter jets were scrambled, but initially nothing was found. But then on Sunday, the object, whatever it was, reappeared and was eventually shot down over Lake Huron near the Canadian border.
We know that the U.S. military now is looking at a wider range of radar data, so they may just be seeing more of these things than they have in the past, but it's not clear whether now recently they're moving more into U.S. airspace and that's causing the concern, or whether this is just an entirely new phenomenon just in the recent days.
I do hope that very soon the administration has a lot more information for all of us on what's going on.
I would prefer them to be trigger happy than to be permissive. This shows some of the problems and gaps that we have. We need to fill those as soon as possible.
Welcome back to Sekulow. Going to wrap up today's show with your calls and questions. So this is give you a call. Give us a call. 1-800-684-3110. I want to launch this, though, for those who maybe join us a little bit later. So this is from the NORAD press briefing. When we talked about this, if you're watching on social media, you'll see our title is We Need Answers. The U.S. General won't rule out extraterrestrials. So if you want to know a little bit about why we say that, and this is coming from, what is the title officially, Will? I have to pull it up. Oh, I got it. This is from General Van Herk, who is the commander of the United States Northern Command and North American Aerospace Defense Command. So when questioned about what the origin is of these flying objects, this is what officially they had to say.
Because you still haven't been able to tell us what these things are that we are shooting out of the sky, that raises the question, have you ruled out aliens or extraterrestrials? And if so, why? Because that is what everyone is asking us right now.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Helene. I'll let the intel community and the counterintelligence community figure that out. I haven't ruled out anything at this point. We continue to assess every threat or potential threat unknown that approaches North America with an attempt to identify it.
All right, so there's the answer, which is the answer is no answer, and we're not even going to tell you it's not aliens.
We don't know.
We don't know.
We do know that we had domain gaps in our intelligence and our surveillance capabilities. This is all. None of this is very confidence building.
No, I think that's the big.
And these guys
takeaway.
aren't confidence builders.
Absolutely not. So we do have some comments and questions that are coming in about this and some of our other topics. Sure. Again, last call for calls 1-800-684-3110. Cheryl's calling on line 1 in Texas. You're on the air.
Hey, Cheryl.
Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
Referencing the spy balloon from China, I believe that was a legitimate balloon from China. But I think these other balloons that have been shot down, I'm beginning to wonder, and it's just my thought, what if our government has been lying to us all along, so they're putting these other balloons out so they can show the American people, hey, we're shooting these balloons down.
Yeah, Cheryl, I think that it's not necessarily a thought that isn't crossing a lot of people's minds, which are now all of a sudden there's 4 or 5 of these over the course of a weekend, and we're not seeing any pictures or video. It's not to be conspiratorial.
How is there no video of the takedown of these aircraft by the aircraft when there was of the Chinese balloon? It was at 60,000 feet. These are at 20,000 and 40,000.
We've seen some things, but you've seen some footage of the fighter jets flying overhead and that happening.
Well, yeah, that part. I'm talking about the strike, and here's the object.
Well, I think some of these are in very remote areas as well. I mean, but who knows? I think that you're right. There's a reason that this is happening all of a sudden, and could it be a distraction? Look, we know this is politics. That's part of the game. Let's not pretend that doesn't happen. Now, do I think that what happened was likely we weren't really checking? That's probably more accurate. That's probably what it is. We weren't really checking to see if these unidentified objects were flying above us and spying on our information, or who knows what they were doing. Again, we're not allowed to even speculate, according to the government, of who they are or where they came from. Let's go ahead and take some more calls. Tim's calling in Colorado. You're on the air.
Well, thanks for taking my call. My question has to do with the taking down of these objects, whether balloon or otherwise.
Yep.
And I'm wondering, what capabilities does the U.S. have to, instead of sending up a large fighter and shooting a missile through it, to send up a helicopter or a fixed-wing aircraft that hovers and puncture a hole in it, a bullet, a harpoon, or something that'll allow it to come down slowly, so instead of being a huge danger, it can be much more controlled?
Yeah, Tim, from what we've been able to kind of assess in that, sure, there are ways to do this. These objects are flying. A lot of them are moving at a decent speed. Not
they keep saying they're kinetic, which means moving.
They're moving. So to catch them is maybe a little bit different. You're thinking of it kind of like a UFO just floating there. I don't think these are that necessarily. I think a lot of these are actually moving. And
they can't tell what the propulsion device is.
And then I think, Tim, the big concern, if this is all to be believed, is that there's dangerous materials on board. These are something that could take down your fight. Look, here's what we at least know, if we are to believe what we're being told, is our fighter jets can take these things down.
Yes.
So it's not impenetrable. These are things that can be taken out of the sky. But you are right. That'd be what you'd hope for. But when you also had the size of the last one, the balloon being gigantic, 200 feet high, and the length of what they said, 4 school buses or however they want to say it. These are small.
With a payload that you could see.
Yeah, they're saying these are smaller, cylindrical things.
But even
these
in
are
the payload you could see, Logan, they did say that when they took it down and then started picking it up, the pieces, they did say that there were explosives on there that would self-detonate the balloon, basically, which could also cause problems. So, the taking it down issue is more difficult than you think. You don't know if they've got
you don't want to
biotoxins.
You don't want to put your toxins. You put stuff out. You don't want your troops at risk for something that may not be at all meaningful. So we'll find out more information.
But we're spending millions every time we launch one of these missiles. You're talking about tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah, and I watched the whole video on what the missiles are and how it works. It's pretty interesting stuff. Yeah, let's go to Mike, who's calling in Pennsylvania. Mike, you're on the air.
Hi, guys. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
My question is about these classified documents.
Right. Yep.
And what's considered classified anyway? I'm sure that President Biden doesn't have documents regarding secret agents in the field somewhere.
No, that is part of... No. That's exactly... I didn't want to cut you off, Mike. I'll let you finish, but no. That's exactly what these are. They can involve human intelligence. The way classifications work, there's levels of classification. Some of these documents were SCI, special compartmental. That means they had to be handled in special areas. Others were deemed top secret or even higher, and that can include assets, human assets. So that's part of this, Mike. Go ahead.
Yeah. My guess is that it's probably dirt on some high-level politician or other American citizen.
I don't know. We're speculating. I'll tell you what we do know. There's lots of it, and a lot of people have it. When I say a lot of people, here's what you got. The former president had his house in Florida subject to a search warrant. At Mar-a-Lago. The current president had his home searched and his beach home searched by the FBI, and if they didn't consent to the search, the Department of Justice was prepared to get a search warrant. The former vice president has had his house searched by the FBI, and they found documents in all these, except for the beach house of the president. But now they've got a fourth location, which was this Boston law firm. And then Mike Pence, former vice president, had his house searched, and you've had that issue there. And so you know what it tells me? The National Archives cannot keep up with the documents. They're not institutionally capable of doing it. They can, harass pro-life students and get them to leave. That they have no problem doing. Get the students out of there, we can handle that. But what they can't do, or what they don't want to do, and this is the concern here, is de-escalate this conflict that they're having with both the current president, the former president, and the former vice president, and make this an administrative issue to get the documents back rather than these criminal proceedings, which is what special counsels do.
Yeah. Thanks for everyone who called in. We really appreciate that and all the comments that came in. As we wrap up, we do want to say thank you to everyone who again listened, but also that we'll be having another show. My brother and I have a podcast that comes on later today. So we release it around 3 o'clock Central, 4 o'clock Eastern, Sekulow Brothers podcast. We have a little more fun, but we also talk about the news of what's going on. We'll talk more about that AOC topic and her thoughts on those Jesus ads that ran in the Super Bowl. We'll also continue the coverage. Look, who knows?
What do you mean you have more fun?
Well, it's a bit, not compared to today. Today was pretty fun. Today was a pretty entertaining and educational version of this show. But, it's a little more relaxed, I'd say, on the Sekulow Brothers podcast. Find that at SekulowBrothers.com on Rumble. You can find us there, and we do that show again. We'll be broadcasting it at 4 o'clock Eastern time today. Again, thank you all for listening. We'll be back tomorrow with another broadcast. Thanks to Ric Grenell. I'm sure we'll have him back on later in the week, Mike Pompeo and others. And again, support the work of the ACLJ. Go to aclj.org. Don't only just support the work, look at the great content produced by our incredible team of lawyers and media staff. Just amazing stuff that's on there. Go to aclj.org and make your tax-deductible donations. We'll be back later this afternoon with the Sekulow Brothers.